We have here, welcome to Bridges Live, and as we start to go live in other places, I will address that. Right now, I know my live podcast channel has started, and so we are get that going, and then I'm going to now start the YouTube channel for that broadcast channel to go live. And it's Black Women's Mental Health Panel. And if you ladies want to send me to later, if you want, we'll add links onto what you do onto the channel itself. And let's see here. You know, and also let you know that a lot of stuff that people hear or see, it's going to be a little bit of a delay because YouTube is a delay and then Twitter's a delay. So if people are watching and seeing it live that way, don't worry so much about the delay. I am so happy that you ladies are here and we get to talk about the black health of the community, specifically our women. Since there it goes. All right. So you ladies, introduce yourself to Black Coffee Conversations. This is what I call it. Real talk about real information. So please introduce yourself. And I'm going to go over here. It'll change. Dr. Moretta, please introduce yourself.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me clearly. My name is Moretta Gramai. I work as a public health analyst at the Health Resources and Services Administration, which is under the umbrella of the Health and Human Services. So it's a sister agency to the CDC and NIH, to name a few. Some of my work consists around supporting and ensuring that health equity is actually happening. So that's relative to social injustices, racial injustices, ensuring that we have in place for all populations, primarily low-resourced and marginalized communities, but ensuring that there is access to care and access to treatment. So I'm excited to be here to offer perspectives from the health equity lens and to be on this call and learn as well. Thank you for having me.
And Consuela, please, you're next.
Hi, good morning. My name is Consuelo Senior, and I work predominantly with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'm an assistant director of training. I've been practicing psychotherapy for about 13 years with people with disabilities as well as people who do not have intellectual disabilities. I also am an adjunct professor and I teach disability courses and social work courses, I'm a social worker. And I have a private business called ConsueloAmanda.com where I talk about emotional intelligence, and especially for people in our Caribbean community and people of faith, looking at mental health in those particular arenas.
And Dr. Jeannie, please. You muted.
Trying to be polite. My apologies. Hi.
Here you go.
I'm Green. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Currently employed with New York Presbyterian Hospital. I work specifically in acute care, acute psychiatry, specifically mental health, dealing in people who have unfortunately are experiencing an acute mental health crisis. I also have a private practice, so just bringing kind of therapy for all, specifically women of color, people of color, into communities, and
So I've been wanting to champion this cause. And first, I know as a black community, I know I'm very spiritual. So I would like to at least have a prayer for us to get our words and our hearts felt. I hope that's okay. So if everyone just please, dear Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing our panel together. I would like for our words to be felt and heard to understand. If there's a misunderstanding, please have them raise their hand and ask the question so they can seek the help, so we can heal our trauma, so we can heal our wounds, so we can heal ourselves, so we can prosper, not just as a community of individuals, but a community of togetherness, so we can heal as a nation. In Heavenly Father, in Jesus Christ we pray, amen. Thank you. Thank you for allowing that to come. And so, the black community, as we know, as a whole, we knew inside the black community, our women has always been our backbone. But yet, we have failed to strengthen our backbone, which is our women. Let's start with you, Dr. Moretta. How has that impacted the mental health of the women that you know now?
Sure. So, what research does show in general when we look at health equity and the implications of mental health, right? So, you can't just look at mental health and not look at the other factors that play a part. They all have to be considered. So we look at the socioeconomic status of a person in the community. We look at their living standards, their housing. And so it manifests itself and produces a lot of implications around health disparities. And unfortunately, African-American women have been impacted greatly.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as far as in terms of the home, as you mentioned, the support of a black man with a black woman, having the support of just that backbone, like you said, I think it's key, it's vital, it's critical. And to be honest, it's fundamental. Without that, I think devoid of that, and I always say this, you're limited in how far you can go. And not only will it have impact on your mental health, right? And then subsequent to that, a lack of access and treatment due to different barriers that may be in place. Again, referencing socioeconomic status also plays a part. But within the home, it is key that, and critical, to be honest, and vital that the family structure supports the woman. Because as I spoke to you about in our previous chat, the man may be the head of the household, but the woman is the neck. She is the foundation. Mm-hmm. She is the strength. She is the caretaker. And in a time of a crisis, such as what we're dealing with right now with COVID-19, unfortunately, African-American women are on the front lines. And front lines, we think oftentimes are doctors and nurses. But there are a lot of people that have to still go to work. Some of us may have the luxury of working from home, which is ultimately a blessing. But there are many women that don't have that luxury and are forced to face the world and risk the health of themselves and their loved ones. So if there is a gap between what's, black men and black women, it definitely has to be filled. This is not the time for any separation in any form to be present. It's important and it's incumbent upon everyone to really be in support of the black woman.
So with that, and Consuelo, you're next. And please, what are your thoughts on the same question?
I do agree in terms of the strength of the black woman. And even for those mothers who are at home who now find themselves, women are always having multiple roles, right? We are everything to everyone at all times, and have always been putting, ourselves last. But I think there's even more pressure now, even working from home, because now you're a teacher. Mm-hmm. You're a para, right? And you still have to take care of the home, and you're doing so without that outlet or that break that we usually have. And women often don't ask for help like we really should, even though we like to share things.
That is...
Don't ask for help like we should. And I wanted to add something to that equation is culture, and how much culture expects the strong black woman to be the strong black woman. And so we internalize a lot of things and we don't talk about it. And then that becomes a major issue because we're not talking about it. We're not really talking about where we want to help because we want to prove that we can take care of home. And that becomes a major issue. And so, we find that people will self-medicate, or we find that it then becomes even more compounded in terms of our mental health.
Yeah.
Right? And that when that complete breakdown happens, it's like, well, where did that come from?
So, and Dr. Jeannie, please, next.
Yes, absolutely. So I want to speak to, I think Consuelo did an excellent job of incorporating culture into this idea,
right?
Into the notion per se. And really, from a cultural standpoint, not only is there this issue of stigma that exists within the community, right? It's stigma that exists within the home. You have people coupled, black people together, wife, husband. Husband has his own understandings and ideas of what it means to be, to have introspection, right? What it means to kind of associate with the mental health field in itself. And there are some real historical incidences where, you know, Black people have been violated within that institute. So you have, you know, the husband's understanding his culture, his mistrust of the mental health system as a whole, and that is impressed upon by the wife. So even when you see women who are looking to seek treatment, there's this mistrust that exists within the household. So they're discouraged in some ways also not to participate, not to take care of themselves. And you know, when husband holds an idea that, you know, us women are those who do hold up the household and puts on that expectation as well, that creates another set of whole cultural ideas. So we're expected by our husbands to hold everything up, to have everything together, and not to seek out help in those realms.
You know, I know I've had other panels before, and I'll continue to have mental health panels before with women, men, women, and men, and mental health. And we know there's a stigma inside our community, inside the household. And we're trying to break that silence. Is there a hammer that we can use to crack open the silence of mental health? Because I believe if we are in a relationship with ourselves, and we are in a relationship with our community, and I am personally unhealthy, how can this ever be a good relationship we're having? Dr. Jeannie, go ahead first.
So, I mean, it really does start with, you know, advocating as a whole for there to be transparency within the mental health field. I think a part of what I've seen in my work is that there's consistently this misunderstanding of what the field offers in itself. Everyone thinks, you know, when I say I work in acute care, it's all institutionalization, right? Everybody's going to be locked up and all your rights are going to be taken from you, and there's going to be no autonomy that you can have over what happens in your life. So I think, you know, there being just in general more education, more people of color within the field in itself, because I can't tell you how many times I've been told by a person of color who comes into my facility, oh my God, thank God you're here. Like just the thank God you're here. A practicing, you know, educated mental health professional, someone who looks like me,
right,
can very quickly destigmatize the terror that can come in being in an institution or being within a practice. And that's why we have things like therapy for Black girls and resources that exist for people of color as a whole, because it's so necessary to have exposure in that way. So I think when we're talking about how can we make this something that's visible to everyone and comfortable for everybody, it has to start with people of color really deciding we're going to get into this field, we're going to, you know, infiltrate this field and ensure that when you're coming in, you see people who look like you.
You know, Dr. Marietta, I want you to add on to that, because we as people, are we technically mistrusting because we're slave traumatized, or are we just mistrusting because of the field of mental health? I mean, I'm not sure if are they the same? Are they synonymous?
Oh, so you gave me the very deep one, the deep question. You know, there's so many ways we can go with this, and you know, I'll have to save this for another time. But what I will say is mistrust in the healthcare system as a whole is deeply rooted and founded in a long history of truth. And a lot of times we think of mistrust with the healthcare system, and that is under that umbrella of the healthcare system includes, of course, mental health. We think of the Tuskegee experiment, right?
Yeah.
But there's other experiments that were happening simultaneously and prior to that. And these are, again, this is why I would say African Americans, minorities in general, are hesitant to tap into any resources that they are presented with. There's a hesitation there. That is not just, again, something that is just a theory. It's truth. And so it has to be respected. And so like Dr. Jeannie said, it's key that African Americans that are dedicated to the cause of helping their people really step up and are not afraid to say, well, listen, I offer these services and I know how to meet you where you are because I look like you. It's very difficult for people that do not look like you to relate to you. And that is just the truth. That's a fundamental truth we have to accept. So when we step into a healthcare system, that they say African Americans are hesitant to use the new or take part in trials around COVID-19. Excuse me, rightfully so. People are afraid because of what has happened, and so.
Wait a minute. What do you say? Fool me once, okay, but fool me twice.
So we kind of turn our face up like, but it's because we are afraid, and why not? Why not have hesitation? Why not say, I want to research this a little further? We have the rights to do so. And so with everything that has now come forth around, Black Lives Matter, we have been compounded with so much that, again, we are just really trying to make sense of everything that's happening. So it's all unfortunately entangled with one another. Social injustices and health equity, ensuring that they're both happening. That has to be a primary focus for all health practitioners. So that's providers, that's social workers, that is public health practitioners. Everyone has to be on board in ensuring that these people that don't have voices, we are their voice. And so, I think we're traumatized, but we should be traumatized. We should, walk with trepidation. We should tread lightly as we navigate the healthcare system.
Consuelo, when we talk about, culture, and you're from Jamaica, right, Consuelo?
Yes, I am.
And when the American black people don't have a culture, so they just as lost emotionally with themselves, and that's why they cannot connect to the mental health relationship? Do you see that as an entity? When it comes to the women, let's go with that, because specifically the women, because the men have other issues.
Yes and no. So I speak to two things. I think one, being a Jamaican, I have an identity, and that's my identity, and it's a strong identity, because I grew up seeing people who look like me in leadership. Our national heroes are people who look like me. They're people who look like me on the money. You can, because you see the same people in the big houses are the people who look like you, right? There's more of a class system there. And even though I've been living here for over 20 years, I still identify as a Jamaican woman because that's my identity, all the aspects of who I am. I think that is an issue in the American community, because I still think that Black people in America are still trying to have that identity, because it shouldn't be a Black American, it should just be an American, right? You're born here, you grew up, you're born here, you're an American. It shouldn't matter, in Jamaica when I was growing up, we didn't say I'm a Chinese Jamaican, I'm an Indian Jamaican, I'm a Irish Jamaican. You're born here, you're a Jamaican. So that kind of unifies. So I think in one essence, yes, because people, Black people are still learning. You talked about, all the lies that were told. So people are still learning. And throughout this time with Black Lives Matter, I believe a lot of Black people are coming into the truth of a lot of things, right, that were never told.
Right.
One thing early coming here is I was not going to be seen as a Jamaican. I'm going to be seen as the color of my skin first. So I took it upon myself to learn Black history, because in this country, I'm a Black woman. And I've been learning ever since. And throughout this time, I've learned even more. So I think, that distrust always is there, because how much have they lied? These books that you're supposed to be using in school are lies. Like, everything is a lie, right?
Right.
The data, the wonderful data, is all, half of them are lies, because we know it can be skewed. So in that sense, I would say yes. However, in Jamaica, there is still a stigma with mental health, right? It's not something you do because it's seen as a sign of weakness, right? You're crazy. That means you can't think right. You can't, literally what they'll say. You're crazy. So the stigma, I believe, goes deeper than that, that even when you do have a strong identity nationally, you can still have that stigma. What I think it needs to be is still education, but in understanding how much mental health is a part of your general health. We talk about people getting a physical every year.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about people doing mental health physical every year. That mental health should be a part of, right? As women, you have your medical checkup, but you also have a GYN checkup. There should be a mental health checkup, right? And when I talk about emotional health, emotional intelligence, I talk about that, right? Being aware of who you are, because you said something very profound, and you talked about that relationship. There can be no relationship until you have a good relationship with self. And I believe a lot of the problem is that we do not know who we are, and we have not developed a solid relationship with our authentic self, not the self we're projecting on social media or the self we feel other people need to know, but who you are when nobody is around. And I believe once we start there, that's one. And the second thing is in schools. Let's start talking about mental health in the same vein as your physical health, in the same vein as your GYN. It needs to be a regular part of what a healthy system is, a healthy person is.
Dr. Jeannie, I call this time of whatever you want to call this time, the COVID time, the whatever, but I do call it our new revolution. I do call it, this is where we are not silent, and we should never be silent. But in this new revolution, right, how can we be strong as a people if we don't have strength within ourselves? Do you see that as a problem? Because we have not developed that relationship, specifically women championing their own strength?
I honestly, I can say I do not see that as the issue.
Okay.
With the community, I do see a very clear picture of the strength of us as a people and as a whole. What I also see, and what we fail to recognize very often, and what we fail to acknowledge very often, are the systemic things at play which absolutely undermine the strength within our people. I mean, Consuela, just in you speaking about how there is that understanding of Black Americans, of being a Black American versus just an American. These are systemic things that exist.
Yeah.
This is a social construct that was put in place within this country as a whole with the specific goal of separating and creating a system of benefits. And where systems are at play, it is a very difficult thing to then have individuals act and be able to have full autonomy over what happens with them as a whole. You know, I think it's very important, like just pivotal in these times right now, and this is what we're seeing, is people saying, no, we are actually working. We have been trying. We have been demanding. These systems that you have in play, these oppressive tactics that you're utilizing as a whole, they are no longer going to be tolerated. I think there's a problem in a society where all around you is the iconography of terror.
Wow.
Of when you do seek any type of care or have any type of hope, you are being persistently crushed by systems that ensure that you're going to either have to work 50 times harder to accomplish the same things as your white counterparts, or when you do work harder, at some point these things will be stripped from you. And they'll be stripped from you in ways that are overtly racist. And then you will be undermined in that, you will be gaslighted in that, and be told that it's a part of your individual failure. So I take specific events in the concept that Black women and Black people aren't strong enough. I absolutely believe that they are, but I know that there are systems in place that undermine them achieving what they should achieve as far as care for themselves, as far as caring for their families, and as far as showing up within our society.
You know, Dr. Moretta, in the Black community, I said earlier that the women are the backbone. But here's the question I have. When they're taking care of the women, the children, the love, and everything, there's so much pressure for them to say, I don't have time for me, which is then breaks up everything. How do we address that in our women? I know as men, I'll have this conversation later with other men and how we can support our Black queens and our women in our community. But how do women support themselves and get the help they need?
Yeah, well, first, I think I'm going to sort of combine everything that we've said thus far.
Right.
I think it's important that and I always believe this, once you have a sense of self, Consuela said, you are then able to meet other people where they are. And I always say this, especially Black women supporting Black women. I am a strong supporter of this. When you see another queen, that is the first thing. You celebrate their accomplishments, you celebrate their beauty, you celebrate them because you know who you are. You know, there's not a lack that's there. And so I think when you see someone that may be suffering in silence, important that you reach out. And I always say, I'm very fortunate. I always say this, have great women around me, great girlfriends, where we check on each other. It's an I love you. It's a good morning, beautiful. It is, we're celebrating each other in conjunction with the support we get from our men, And so we still have our camaraderie that's built and cultivated over years, and it's been tried and tested, and it's fully intact. And so in times of distress, when one of us may be suffering, and we can sense, because we are so close, we can sense when something is off, and we can reach out and say, hey, what's going on? What can I do to help facilitate, a change? And so that's that. So I think, Consuelo, that's an excellent point. Once you know yourself and you have that, that cultivated sense of self, you're then able to help others. Without helping yourself, you are no good to anyone, within the household and beyond. So, I'm someone, if I see a sister out, and she just does not look well, and you shared a story with me, how you and your wife, Dr. Dyer, have done that as well.
Right.
It's so important. It takes nothing from you to see another queen out and say, how can I help you? Because I would want that done for me. I'm not always at my best, right? And so I love when my sisters are uplifting for me as well. And especially within our field, we have the resources. We have, we're privy to information and exposed. We're blessed to be exposed to information where we are able to pull from and help others. So, within the household, to answer your question and circle back, in order to move the needle on mental health, we first have to know ourselves and what we're lacking. And Black women are expected to be so strong. And that also manifests itself and has shown up in data around childbirth. The maternal mortality rate for Black women is, it's incomparable to that of non-minorities, right? And so the more educated, you have to hear this, the more educated you are as a Black woman, the more of a likelihood it is for a Black woman to die during childbirth. That's insane. That's
scary. It's almost sick to just hear it, but to know it. Here's the thing. There's things you ladies are saying, and you three know, I know, other mental health professionals know, and yet when you ask the average Black woman, they're like, I had no idea. And you're like, how is that? I mean, why is that?
Yeah, I think why, and I'll just share this, and, maybe Consuelo and Dr. Jeannie have their, experiences as well. But from my experience, I think the people that don't know, the Black women that are not aware, is because it's not being told to them.
Okay.
It's, we hear about it maybe in passing, but it doesn't really hit you, unfortunately, until it happens to you or to someone that you know. And so this is why it's incumbent upon all health practitioners, to be dedicated to empowering Black women. And that means empowering them with, ensuring access to care and treatment, providing our services if it requires, depending on their social and economic status and where they fall, ensuring that we offer our services sometimes free of charge, whatever it takes, because it's important that this information is passed along in a way that's understandable. And I'm just going to add one more thing. It's important. This is why health literacy is so important, because if people are not health literate, you cannot expect someone that is not a healthcare practitioner to break down, their prescriptions, their any of their information that's being shared. It has to be broken down in a way that's understandable for each demographic, right? And so that's why it's important that we all take, responsibility in ensuring that that's happening.
Consuelo, please go ahead. You're next.
I'm a teacher first, and one of the things that I loved about teaching English was I loved the storytellers. I love the people in the community. I was always drawn to the older people. And I think as a community, in terms of getting information down to other Black women, instilling a sense of pride in other Black women, encouraging them on, helping them to understand and helping to find their worth. Because that's one of the other things I've found in Black community, is that us as Black women have lowered standards, lower than they should be. We have lost our worth. We don't, I asked a young lady, what's your worth? And she looked at me as if I had 10 heads. And I think that there is a responsibility on those of us, those of us who know more, those of us who are older. I crossed over 50 a couple of years ago, so I celebrated by saying it's wisdom. But I really think that there's a big onus on those of us who are are in the mental health profession, but also those of us as we get older and we learn to pass that knowledge and wisdom down to the younger generation, to those who didn't have anyone speaking into their existence, sharing that information. And now with all the different, put it in the TikTok. I'm like, whatever it is that's going to gain their attention. Some things, put it in a video game. Can somebody create a video game that talks about mental health? Can we have mental health workers in schools that's going to help children from a young age say, I want to be a social worker. I want to be a therapist. I want to, right? It comes from how are we helping people to understand the worth of the profession so that they can join the profession. And a lot of times, on my job, I speak to staff who are trying to figure out where they want to go in life. And I ask, what's your passion? Are people talking about passion anymore? So I believe education, yes, but we need to be getting into places, unconventional ways, meeting people where they're at, TikToks and video games, and we need to be getting that information there. And as women, I got to, very quick note, I speak at a lot of different functions across the country and actually international. And I've been in places where I'm the only person of color who is a speaker. And yeah, and what amazes me, and I don't know if you ever had this, you go up to sign up and you see people in front of you and they say I'm a speaker and they say welcome. And then I go up and I say I'm a speaker and they ask, I'm sorry, what's your name again? And looking in the other pile to see the name until it's not there and then okay, not alone. But then I go in and I speak and I see the faces and who comes up to say anything at the end? Maybe one person of color.
Maybe.
Yeah. And that's one of the issues that you were talking about, Dr. Moretta. We are supporting each other as we should. There's something in the culture that has us fighting against each other as opposed to supporting each other and coming together because we understand the struggle. And we need to cultivate that again. And I think it starts in our younger kids in school, but also as, women that, and I don't know how we're going to do that now with older women, but I just think storytelling, let's come together, let's sit, let's talk. Let's show that we all have some similar stuff. That this Facebook is awesome, and social media is awesome, but it also has a lot more people putting a facade up and suffering silently behind. And somehow we need to have more opportunities where we can be real, have real talk, and reach people so that they know that it's okay to reach out for help.
Dr. Jeannie, I want you to tackle on a couple of things, but there's something I want to ask you specifically, because I think a lot of black women don't see themselves, like you ladies said, don't see themselves in the therapist. Knowing you from small to whatever, but I'm not going to get it. How did you see yourself as a therapist that no one saw, not just that you didn't see, because you had to model something from your own internal? And I want you to talk to those women about that, because you have a story.
Absolutely. It's in being so young and in suffering trauma and in recognizing, I was someone who the way of coping was through school, was through education, and that leads you to counselors within school when they see something that's going on for you. It's consistently about people, and it's interesting because in some ways people will recognize in you when there's this sort of innate force that's like sort of provoking you to seek out help in some way. They recognize and invest in you. And I was fortunate enough to, from a young age, be someone who was bright. So when you're bright, they're like, oh, this person should be in gift intelligent courses. So in that, I had teachers who were personally invested in me. And when they saw something going wrong, they saw I was having a mood issue, they saw I didn't seem like myself, they took time out to care. Those were not always people of color. Fortunately, they were allies to people of color, which is, of course, very appreciated. But in that, seeing that, these are roles where people want to help and they want to be involved in the lives of kids and students. I saw that as, that's what I want to be. I want to be someone who helps and nurtures and, fosters in people this ability to be candid in the mental health field as a whole. I do want to speak to some of the things that Consuela has said specific to just having generational understanding, right? Because I think it's important, obviously, that you see models of women who are older than you, of your mothers, your grandmothers, etc. You listen to them, you understand their lessons because they've learned those lessons many times, just through such brutal force, and it's upsetting. And taking their opinions is important, but I also want to say, that it's important for women of a certain age group to recognize the perspective of the younger generation that is much more open to mental health, is much more open to fluidity and things just being a spectrum, everything from like race to gender to all of these things just being a very, very fluid kind of understanding. And in that, we need to be able to, just like we need to look to our elders need to sometimes look to us as well to lead the way and to find trust in us that we have vetted the system because we understand. We've been taught now that they're not going to tell us all about our history. They're not going to help us heal our community, that we have to go out and we have to seek the information, and then we have to bring it back to our communities. And some of those older women are stuck in certain ways, right? They have certain ways of coping. They were like, oh no, we don't, why are you upset right now?
Right.
I remember being a kid and having my mom say like, fix your face, or I'm going to fix it for you. And you're like, oh, but I'm entitled to my emotions, right? Like,
not in this house, you're not. Not around me, you're not entitled to your own emotions.
Exactly. So, we have a younger generation coming up who are like, when my face looks salty, it's because I'm not in a good mood. I don't feel well. And that's okay. That's okay. And just recognizing, too, the significance of a tribe. I have a full tribe of women who are around me, who surround me consistently, I'm a married person, and we travel together and we do a marriage counseling thing with each other. It's not real, we're all educated people, but it's really just about speaking candidly about what's happening and holding each other accountable within our marriages. And things like that, they need to exist more often. We need to talk to each other with the facade that you spoke about, that we have to carry into work, because you can't go in looking a certain way, otherwise you're typecast as aggressive or uncaring or unprofessional or whatever it may be. We need to be able to, with each other, take down that veneer and be open in that way.
I got a inbox from one of the social medias, and it says that women don't trust women because they have been undermined by other women before. Dr. Moretta, how do we fix that? So maybe woman's their best friend stole their man. I don't know. So how do I trust another? I don't know. How do we do that? How do we fix that?
Yeah. I'm not too sure I can offer how to fix it because it's individual, right?
Right.
Yeah, your individual experience. But I think it's just, again, it's rooted in a sense, cultivating a sense of self. And when you know who you are and you've taken time to work on yourself and you love who you are genuinely, you can see another beautiful woman, you can see another educated woman and celebrate her. And actually, this is now an ally. Actually, this is someone I can tap into for support, resources. My friends that also have their doctorates, have their masters, very well educated, we use each other as resources. We plug each other. Hey, this will be a good thing for you. This is not my specific field. Hey, my friends call me Mimi, health equity, this is for you. Get into this. But that's how we do, because what do you lose nothing. You lose absolutely nothing by not highlighting on another woman. So, it's unfortunate. There are some women that are, mischievous and have, whatever their motive may be to take from another woman. If you cannot stand seeing another woman highlighted, then you need to work on yourself. It's time that you take a moment and just sit and write it down and flesh out anything that is from childhood trauma and now manifesting itself in mental and physical health. Because if you are not well on the inside, you'll see it on the outside. You will see it, you will see it. And so, they always say that natural glow that happens when you are in a great relationship.
Yeah.
That relationship isn't only your spouse or your partner, but it's your friendships. Yeah. It's working on you first and then in turn facing others. And so, I guess, to again circle back and say how to best, navigate new friendships or existing friendships. work on yourself first. Figure out what you may be lacking and what childhood trauma is now manifesting itself as an adult. What can you do to fix it? And don't take it out on anyone else. Fix yourself first. And then you'll be astounded by what type of friendships come about from you just fixing yourself.
Consuelo, with this with our new revolution in the midst, and we being traumatized as a community, and the black women being the strength that they believe that they need to be, what are some of the signs that they can look for that would help them ask the question, I need help?
Things like isolation.
Yeah.
We were in quarantine, but quarantine does not mean isolation, because you still can reach out and connect with people. How much are you beating up on yourself? Right? We all do things that we wished we had done differently. The ability to forgive ourselves. You know, we did something wrong, forgive yourself and move on. And when you find that you're stuck and you start thinking, oh, well, I'm not so good. Well, maybe I shouldn't try that anymore, right? All these, I shouldn't, I don't deserve.
Like the difference between guilt and shame.
Yes. Right? And those are red flags. When you find that you're too angry, and when I mean angry, I mean that everything annoys you, you're irritable, and you're angry.
You mean not like black women angry, but like different type of angry?
Okay. We have a right to be angry sometimes.
Thank you.
You gotta get loud for the people in the back who didn't hear it.
They don't listen. Or we're saying, you know, can you just listen and you want to fix? We didn't say fix, we say listen, right?
Yeah.
There's that part. But then there's the other part of just being angry for everything. You're just angry, and you don't, like, get angry and you don't even know why you're angry. Like, somebody could ask you, what are you angry about? Well, I don't know, that's a red flag. When you stop caring about what you look like, right? Or it's too much. When you start changing your physical appearance too much, it's saying subliminally that you're believing that something is wrong with who you are initially, right? And any of us can. But this morning I was talking to a friend, and he said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "I'm putting my war paint on." He didn't understand, and I said, "Back in the day, that's what some men would say: women wear war paint if they're putting on makeup." But then, you know, so we put things on that make us feel good, but when we start changing ourselves,
There's a difference.
Something unrecognizable.
Yeah.
That's a problem, you know, and I find a lot of, you know, black people now, we have hurt, we've experienced trauma, and have hurt and pain on top of it, layers and layers and layers, family history, work situations, relationships that we haven't dealt with. And for some people, even during this time of revolution, it's very difficult for them. It's very painful for them. They don't want to hear certain stories because they haven't resolved it within themselves. You know, so so some of those things that are real red flags. And I really think when you have a good group around you and a good mixed group around you, I believe you should have people who are older than you should have people who are younger than you should have people who are very different from you, right? And then you know the spaces. There's that circle curriculum. I'm also a sex educator. So that circles curriculum, you have people in different circles in your life, and it's okay to move them around. When somebody messes with your man and you don't, you can still talk to them, but you're moving them to the outer circle because it may be family and you can't really get rid of them. But understanding that it's your life, and when you love yourself, you can then move people to different positions in your life so that they don't affect you that much. But it really is the village. We were created to exist in community. We were not created to exist alone. So we grow and develop in community. And when you have a good community around you, somebody's going to pick up on something and say, what's going on with you? You know, have that trusted advisor who you can go to and say, okay, tell me what you're seeing that I'm not seeing. Show me some blind spots, because they're the ones who are going to help you with the blind spots.
You know, one of the things that you all had said is about the community you're in. I agree so much with community, and I believe in this time, in this new phase, this new normal, this new process. This is why I want to do mental health panels. This is why I want to talk about mental health, because we have to. And I don't like to use have to or shoulds in any way, but we have to develop a stronger community. And if you don't find yourself, I don't see you automatically put yourself on the out of a community or even the process of developing community. So, Dr. Moretta, how can someone join a community? You have your girlfriends. Consuelo has a girlfriend. You guys have your community. This is a community. But there's some women we know, we've heard, we've seen, we've read about that they feel like they're alone. And we want to tell them, you're not, sister, you're not alone. Queen, you're not alone. And they look at these memes, they look at these things, because we talked about, sometimes social media is very good, but sometimes people hide behind social media saying that I do have a community when you don't, because you really do feel like you're alone. How do they develop that community? And I know that seems like a very convoluted thing, but I really want women to understand that they have a community. How can they get that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I would offer two things. I think the first is when you've already, so now let's move past cultivating that sense of self. You now know who you are. You'll be surprised to see what you're now attracting. You're attracting authenticity, just quality people that are into balancing a friendship. So it's not just a take, it's a give and take. So I think that's the first thing. But the second part to that is it's going to be important that us as Black women reach out to those that may feel as though they're outside of a circle. And so see someone that may have just untapped into abilities that, you just know they'll flourish if you just offer them, well, here's a resource that I heard about. You're really good. You're artistic. Well, we'll try this. Or you're a great speaker. Try this. Offering yourself as a resource will go far for them as well. So if you see someone that's just not fitting into, a social circle, there's nothing wrong, again, with reaching out and saying, I'm here. If it's just a listening ear, if it's something that I can do, I always say, listen, I am very fortunate within my role and my position to be exposed to very brilliant people. Whatever I can do, let me know. I'm going to help you. Whatever I have, any resources that I have, use me as a guide. And so I offer that to anyone else. If you see someone that's lacking in any area, and sometimes you have to just delve a little deeper and figure out what's going on in their lives. It could be something that's happening within their home. It could be something that's happening at work. It could be, anywhere. Figure out what's happening, what you can do on your end. And if it's something that's beyond your scope of work, pass on information to someone that is able to meet their needs.
So, Dr. Jeannie, next, please. What do you think? How can someone help to develop that community?
Absolutely. And I think Dr. Marty spoke to this. And it's this idea also, and I think what she was describing to some degree was this idea of mentorship as well.
Mm-hmm.
There are opportunities for mentorship that exist. I always encourage clients, young women that I work with who are of color, who, if they're struggling in some way to kind of find their purpose, like maybe they are one of those mental health workers, right? But they want to be a doctor someday. That stretch, that elevation, when you don't know what that looks like and you don't have the trajectory mapped out for you, or there's no assistance, and mapping that trajectory can seem impossible, and it's not. So just having a mentor, having someone who can describe how do I get from point A to point B is extremely helpful. And also, yes, having people around you who they don't necessarily exist within your circle, because that's a part of community too, right?
Right.
People who are in, marginalized communities where there just aren't the level of resources, or if there are resources, they're fighting over the same resources, right? How do I get exposed to those resources? Or if this person gets them, then I don't get them. So we need to speak to how do we utilize, as young people, the internet to find the things that we need, or other such big resources that could help. And there are meetups that exist there's meetups for curly hair. There are meetups, there's meetups for anything out there that you would want to get into. there is a community that exists. And whether it's a tele community like, what we're doing right now, which is so wonderful, or it's, I sign up the computer, but I go off and I meet with these people and I convene. And then in those shared interests, you find, oh, this is an opportunity for me to bring in this part of my life, which is, I've been struggling to make girlfriends. I've been struggling to figure out how to identify a career path that's going to work for me. And so, slowly but surely in opening up, you create space for building your own community. I do encourage that. And I know that's a lot to put on an already marginalized community and already a community that already has a lot of work to do, right? Is to say, if you don't have community, you got to go out and build one. If you want to make friends, you better show yourself friendly, right?
Right.
So, I think that's a big part of how to accomplish that goal is in recognizing that it does. It starts internally. It starts, with that motivation to, if you don't have it right in front of you, you can't see it right in front of you, just Google it and find a mentor and get somebody in there who's going to be like, oh, okay, this is what I took, or at least they can get you goal adjacent, right? If they can't get you right to your goal, they can get you somewhere near it, and then you can take it from there, if that makes sense.
We're going to be ending soon, and I want to say I thank you so much for you ladies, because I think with what we're doing is helpful. That's why I do it. I think the piercing of the balloon it's got to pop. That's why we do it. I think with what we are championing has to be said. That's why we do it. How can people reach you so they can reach out to you? And I'll start with Dr. Jeannie. If they want to contact you just for their own personal reasons, please give your contact.
Sure. They can reach out via my LinkedIn. That's completely fine. I don't know if we have something that we can connect for them following this. I'd be happy to take any information there. My email is available. I can write that in as well. I'm open. Also, I'm a private contractor, so I can provide a card if that's helpful as well. And in general, if there's questions or anything like that, feel free to leave them in my inbox or wherever else. I'm happy to take those types of. And I'm actually really good at responding to things like that. So up all the time. So yeah.
And I know, Consuelo, you actually go to different places and just sit and say, if you need help, talk to me. I'm here for you to talk to. And how can people get a hold of you while you're in Brooklyn?
I definitely by my LinkedIn. They could go there. My email, which is my name, which is right there on the screen, is Consuelo Senior LCSW@gmail.com. They can reach any of those ways. They can contact me. I will definitely respond to the email. I love sitting with young people and helping them. That mentoring is really important. And we have to use what's in our hands, right? Everywhere we are at, we can influence.
And Dr. Moretta, I know we're down the road from each other, but how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way for me is through LinkedIn at my first and last name, Maranta Gurmai. Outside of that, I'm not really on social media, but I'm pretty good as well as far as responding. And I think it's a great forum and space for information sharing. So I'll be happy to help in any way that I can.
I just want to say thank you, ladies, for, Black women health is very important. We know it. We said it before. I hope people listen to this over and over, to this panel, the next panel, and please reserve space for next month because I'm going to do this every month for women. So those of you who are watching, there's going to be a women's panel of mental health. There's going to be a men's panel of mental health. There's going to be Black education of economic and finances. There's a lot of branches on our tree that just can be fixed, needs to be fixed, needs to be healed so we can all prosper as a community, as a nation, together forward. Because if we don't, I'll just wrap this up, if we don't take responsibility on our own mental health, then we stay broken. And if we stay broken, then this doesn't go anywhere. Then we just end up finger pointing and we end up blaming, either ashamed of ourselves or very guilt of ourselves. Thank you so much, ladies, for being on Black Coffee Conversation, real talk about real issues, and I enjoy and I just love you all. Anyone say anything before I say a prayer before we get out of here?
Just say I'm wishing everyone wellness and safety. Keep each other lifted in prayer during this time and always.
All right. Please bow your heads. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for bringing us together. Let our words be heard and felt, like I said before. And Jesus, we pray for your strength and your guidance. And let us move forward as a community. Let us move forward as a nation. Let us move forward as a whole, whether it be black, white, or any of preferences that you call out there. We can heal together as long as we know thyself. And once we know thyself, we will seek that community for us to be strengthened in. Dear, thank you, Heavenly Father, Jesus Christ, we pray, amen. Thank you so much. Bye, ladies.
Bye. Nice meeting you all.
Nice meeting you.
Kids asleep?
Mm-hmm.